Well, you might remember in a previous demo, we created a table called customer, and we created another table called account managers. So if I go and refresh my list of tables here, you can see there's my customer table and there's my account managers table. And the idea is that each account manager is responsible for managing one or more customers. So each customer will have an account manager assigned to them, is another way of thinking of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a column to my customer table that tells me which account manager is the account manager for that customer. And I'm going to do it by adding an integer value. You might remember if we look in the account managers table, here's a little shortcut for you. If I right click account managers here, I can go and select the top 1,000 rows just easily out of that. So we'll go and do that. And it goes and generates the appropriate SQL for me. So I can see here the account managers I've got, and each account manager is identified by a unique employee ID. So I've got an integer value here that identifies each account manager. So what I'm going to do in my customers table, again, we'll just do the same thing with customer. Let's have a quick look at that. Each customer is also identified by an integer ID, but that's neither here nor there. There's nothing in this table that specifically says which account manager is associated with the customer. So we need to add a column to this table, basically. So we're going to do that by using this alter table statement. We're altering the table. We're adding a column called account manager, which is an integer. So it's going to be the integer value that is the employee ID of the account manager that this customer is managed by. And I've added this value here. First of all, I'm saying that I'm going to allow null. So I'll allow the case where a customer doesn't have an employee ID, an account manager associated with them. But when they do have, it will reference the account managers table employee ID column. So in other words, the value that goes in here should match an employee ID that's in the account managers table. So let's go and run that. And off it goes and happily completes that. And if I have another look at my customers table, we'll just go and run that select top 1,000 rows again. I've now got my account manager column. That's been added to the table, but the values are all null just now because I haven't inserted any customer ID values into there. Well, let's go and do that. We'll update the customer table and we'll set the account manager for all of my customers to 1. So whoever account manager number 1 is, they're going to be the account manager for all of the customers. And we'll just again go and verify that that's actually happened. So let's have a look. Yep, sure enough, account manager is set to 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new customer. So I've got a brand new customer in here. This is Rhonda Hughes. I'm adding her. And I'm specifying it when I insert the table, this last column here is the account manager column, and I'm specifying that this one has account manager number 2. So if I go ahead and do that, sure enough, we've got 1 row affected. We've inserted that table in there. And if I go and look at my customer table here, sure enough, Rhonda Hughes is in there with account manager number 2. And if I look at my account managers table, we can even find out who that actually is. Employee number 2 is Rosie Reeves. So we know that Rosie Reeves is the account manager for Rhonda Hughes. All right, well, so far so good. What happens if I try to insert a new customer with a non-existent account manager? So we don't have an account manager. We don't have anybody with employee ID number 9, but we'll try and insert that into there. And actually that fails. We get an error that says the insert statement conflicted with the foreign key constraint. Remember when I altered the table, I specified that this has to reference the account manager's table employee ID column. That created this thing called a foreign key constraint. So the foreign key is the key in the customers table that references the primary key in the account managers table. And it says it conflicted with that foreign key constraint, and it occurred in that database, and the column was the employee ID column. So we've tried to insert a customer with an account manager that doesn't exist in the account managers table. That is not allowed because of that constraint. So the statement is terminated and the customer is not inserted. So what we're really doing here is we're using foreign key constraints in order to enforce what we call referential integrity between the tables in my database. Where I've got a value in one table that references a row in another table, we have referential integrity enforced here because of the constraints that prevents me from putting in a value in the first table that references something that doesn't exist in the second table.
So what have we learned?
Well, that's a good question. Let's take a look at the slide and see what we've covered in this module. We actually covered quite a lot. We talked about using the create table statement to create tables. So we've seen how to do that. We've seen how to use the insert statement to add rows. We'll talk more about inserting and working with data later on, but we've seen the basics of inserting rows and using the select statement to get rows back out of the table. And we've talked about the idea of using constraints that define the relationships between primary keys in one table and a foreign key in that table that references a primary key in another table, and that enforces referential integrity between those tables.